Okay, so Canto 3, Chapter 33, Text 17, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. स्वच्छस्फटिकुटिककुडयेषु महामारकतेषु च प्रदीपा आभान्ति ललनारत्न samyukta. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The wall of the house were made of the first-class marble, decorated with valuable jewels. There was no need of light, for the household was illuminated by the rays of these jewels. The female members of the household were all amply decorated with jewelry. Purport. It is understood from this statement that the opulences of household life were exhibited in valuable jewels, ivory, first-class marble, and furnitures made of gold and jewels. The clothes are also mentioned as being decorated with golden filigree. Everything actually had some value. It was not like the furniture of the present day, which is cast in valueless plastic or base metal. The, the way of Vedic civilization is that whatever was used in a household affair had to be valuable. In case of need, such items of value could be exchanged immediately, thus once broken and unwanted furniture and paraphernalia would never be without value. This system is still followed by Indians in household affairs. They keep metal utensils and golden ornaments or silver plates and valuable silk garments with gold embroidery. And in case of need, they can have some money in exchange immediately. There are exchanges for the money lenders, and the householders. We're gonna read up to where, Mataji? Hare Krishna.
Till text 20 today, Mataji.
Okay.
17, 18, 19, and 20.
Is anybody wants to read now? Is anybody or just two of us?
Yeah, so the Antaranga Seva Mataji joined, my sister joined, Manasi Ganga Mataji also joined. Please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, if you know anybody wants, so
Anyone would like to read, or should
I can read.
Adira Shanta Mataji continue?
I can read text 18.
Okay. Thank you.
Grihodayanam kusumitai ramyam bahwa amaradhrumai kujat vihanga mithunam gayan matha madhuvritam. Translation. The compound of the main householder was surrounded by beautiful gardens with sweet, fragrant flowers, and many trees, which produced fresh fruit, were tall and beautiful. The attraction of such gardens was that singing birds would sit on the trees, and their chanting voices, as well as the humming sound of the bees, made the whole atmosphere as pleasing as possible.
Thank you. Antaranga Seva Mataji, do you have a book? Do you want to read? Text 19.
Sharing the screen, so if they want, they can
Yes.
look at the computer and read also.
यत्र प्रविष्टम् आत्मानं विबुधानुचर जगु व्याप्यम् उत्पलगञ्जिन्यं गर्दनेनोपलालितम्. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation. When Devahuti would enter that lovely garden to take her bath in the pond filled with lotus flowers, the associates of the denizens of heaven, the Gandharvas, would sing about Kardam's glorious household life. Her husband, Kardama, gave her all protection at all times. Purport. The ideal husband and wife relationship is very nicely described in this statement. Kardama Muni gave Devahuti all sorts of comforts in his duty as a husband, but he was not at all attached to his wife. As soon as his son Kapiladev was grown up, Kardama at once left all family connections. Similarly, Devahuti was the daughter of great king Swayambhuva Manu and was qualified and beautiful, but she was completely dependent on the protection of her husband. According to Manu, woman the fair sex should not have independence at any stage of life. In childhood, a woman must be under the protection of the parents. In youth, she must be under protection of husband. In old age, she must be under protection of grown children. Devahuti demonstrated all these statements of Manu Samhita in her life. As a child, she was dependent on her father. Later, she was dependent on her husband. In spite of her opulence, she was later dependent on her son Kapila.
Thank you, Mataji. Uh, we have one more words to cover. Um, Manasi Ganga Mataji, do you have a book? Would you like to read?
Mataji, go ahead. I do have a book, but I'm kind of like watching my nephew at the same time. So,
Okay, sure, Mataji. So then I will read. Thank you. So this is text 20. Hitva tad ipshita mam api akhandalau yoshitam kinchit chakara vadanam putra vishlesha natura. Translation. Although her position was unique from all points of view, saintly Devahuti, in spite of all her possessions, which were envied even by the ladies of the heavenly planets, gave up all such comforts. She was only sorry that her great son was separated from her. Purport. Devahuti was not at all sorry at giving up her material comforts, but she was very she was very much aggrieved at the separation of her son. It may be questioned here that if Devahuti was not at all sorry to give up the material comforts of life, then why was she sorry about losing her son? Why was she so attached to her son? The answer is explained in the next verse. He was not an ordinary son. Her son was the supreme personality of Godhead. One can give up material attachment, therefore, only when one is attached to the supreme person. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishtva Nivartate. Only when one actually has some taste for the supreme spiritual existence can he be reluctant to follow the materialistic way of life. Okay, so these were the verses for today. Um, actually, I have been missing a lot of classes, so I'm not sure like what was the nectar that was being discussed in the previous classes. So I was thinking I will go back and hear them, but then it didn't happen. Hopefully, I'll get back to those classes sometime this week. So I just went briefly through the storyline, and it is said that in the previous verses, after Devahuti has expressed her gratitude to her son Kapiladev, Kapiladev has um, concluded his pastime. I would not say like that because it only says he left home, so I don't know like what his next action is. But so he leaves his house where Devahuti is staying. So and then there is this entire description about the house of Kardama Muni, where Devahuti is actually bathing 3 times a day and she's performing her austerities. She's performing such severe austerities that her body has become very weak, and her hair has become gray, and her clothes have become very old. So this is to actually tell us that she has actually lost all attachment from the worldly affairs. And then there is this entire description of the beautiful house that Kardamuni had, where Devahuti was currently residing. So in the very first of these verses, it speaks about how the walls of the house are made of first class marble, decorated with valuable jewels. And actually, we hear this description about the spiritual world, that there is no need for light, for the household was illuminated by the rays of these jewels. But Kardama Muni's house was so opulent that it almost equals the spiritual world. Like they didn't even need light because the shine of that was coming from all the jewels was illuminating the house. And then it speaks also about all the beautiful jewelry that the female members of the household were decorated with. So actually, his house was full of opulence. And actually, if we see now, unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, opulence is described by the number of plastic cards we have. It speaks about how many of those ATM or credit cards we hold in our pocket. But it doesn't really speak about like if somebody is actually having gold in their house or jewels in their house, which actually is valuable. So it is also described that their furniture of the present day, which is cast in valueless plastic or base metal. So actually, I have an experience where like my mother, she used to have a few of those saris which had zari made of silver. It is said that when we put a little fire then on the border of the sari, because it's made of silver, actually the silver kind of comes out of the border. So actually, that was the opulence that people used to live in earlier ages. We just saw very, very tiny bit of it. It was also explained that my probably like it's my great grandfather or somebody, he used to get his salary in gold coins. And then they used to distribute those gold coins amongst the people who actually brought them vegetables and all of that. So basically the salary used to come in gold coins, and then they would pay the merchants with gold coins. Unfortunately now gold has become such a rare thing that people hardly get to actually see that kind of an opulence now. So the next verse actually speaks about more glories of the surroundings of the house, which is decorated with beautiful gardens with sweet, fragrant flowers and many trees and fresh fruit. And he says that the attraction of gardens was that singing birds would sit on the trees, and their chanting voices as well as humming sound of the bees made the whole atmosphere as pleasing as possible. So despite of having all of these surroundings, Devahuti was not attached to them. She could very easily actually give up her attachment to all of these beautiful things, and her absorption was only in her son. Because previously, I think in the beginning, in the early chapters of the third canto, we hear that Kardama Muni, after um, the birth of Kapila Dev, he actually leaves for the forest to perform more austerities. But when Kardama Muni had left, Devahuti was feeling sad. That's what she expresses to Kapila Muni. But then when Kapila Dev actually leaves home, then she is very, very saddened by the thought. Because at least at the time when Kardama Muni left, she had a son who was going to take care of her. And she had a son who was not an ordinary son. He was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, she was actually not feeling so grieved as she was feeling now. And then, like in the 19th verse, we hear that the ideal husband and wife relationship is based on the fact that the husband gives protection to his wife for her entire life. And then it is described that the women of the society should always be protected. So in the beginning, they are protected by their fathers. Then they are protected, they are given in protection of her husband. And then when the husband actually leaves home, then they are in the protection of the son. Although Kardama Muni was actually not physically with her, he had left home. But here he says that Kardama Muni gave Devahuti all sorts of comforts in his duty as a husband. But he was not at all attached to his wife. Oh, I think that we read this in the we read this in the so we read this in the translation, not in the purport. It says that her husband Kardama gave her protection at all times. So Kardama Muni had actually, although he was not physically present with her, but because he had surrendered everything to the personality of Godhead, his wife was actually feeling that protection. And also the very fact that the personality of Godhead was her son, in that way also she was feeling protected. So actually this is a lesson for all of us, because in the age of Kali, we have read in several times, we have heard this also, that moment to moment there is what is the word I'm actually looking for, like there is I will say distress, but actually that's not the word. Maybe I can't remember. Anyway, so moment to moment we are actually in a very precarious condition. We feel scared, we feel feared, we are misled, and then we have all those qualities that are described in the age of Kali. We are actually going through that phase, but in all of that, there is only one thing that can actually give us protection, and that protection is the absorption in the thoughts of the personality of Godhead. Because in the age of Kali, people get very easily distracted. We have so many of these gadgets, we have so many of, I mean, there are like so many avenues to get distracted. There is not just one to say. And then people are also, because they are so much more forgetful of Krishna than the previous ages. So what happens is that as soon as we forget Krishna, we get more and more entangled in Maya. So whether it is the prajalpa that we are hearing, that this is happening, that is happening, or like all of these actually disturb the mind. They all act upon the mind, and then the mind becomes so restless that it cannot stay in one place. Absorption of Krishna actually means that our mind is steady enough to actually think about the Lord, to be able to hear the name of the Lord. But unfortunately, our mind is just so agitated that it cannot stay in a place. So here, Prabhupada is actually saying that only and only when our absorptions are in the thoughts of Krishna can we actually hear the name of the Lord. Then we feel his protection. When we read his pastimes, when we actually amongst devotees hear kirtan, or when we just associate and then narrate the pastimes of the Lord, or read Srimad Bhagavatam, doing any kind of a devotional activity, whether serving devotees, serving deities, whatever that could be. If we are doing in a prayerful way, thinking about Krishna, then that's the only way we can actually feel the protection and we feel fearless. Because otherwise, there is no, it is said padam padam yat vipadam. So there is no way we can actually come out of this consciousness of fear if we are actually not surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Actually, we were also reading from the first canto that as soon as Parikshit Maharaj, he heard that this snake bird is going to come and bite him in 7 days and he's going to get killed, Parikshit Maharaj immediately left everything. He left his palace, he left his wife, he left his children, he left his animals, he left his religion, he left everything. He just went to the banks of the river, sat there, and then he asked the sages, like, what is my duty now? What am I supposed to do? And there is this question that such a glorious emperor who has like his words are actually written in history because of the great personality he was, how could he leave everything like that in just no time and then just walk to the banks of the river? And the description that is given is that he could do that only because he was completely absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. And it is given, this is from the first canto, and it is given that because he was actually situated in his original constitutional position as the servant of the Lord. So he actually took that position that I'm the servant of the Lord, and then I'm ready to actually hear whatever instruction that is given to me at this time of death. So that is the instruction that is being given to us also. Even here, Devahuti is actually going through the same thing. Like, she has such an opulent situation, but all that she was able to give up and absorb herself in her son, because her son is the personality of Godhead, only because she actually took his instructions to heart. She actually heard those instructions with rapt attention. And it is also said that it is only possible for those devotees who actually are equipoised, basically one can be equipoised only when one is absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. Whether one is put, because Devahuti was actually the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, and she had actually seen those opulences when she was growing up. And then she made this choice to actually marry um, a sage, Kardama Muni, who lived in the forest. So and we know how austere it is to live in the forest. Basically, have nothing. Just have a little hut, and then and Kardama Muni is actually practicing meditation, and she's serving her husband in a very chaste way. So this is the position of a devotee. Whether the devotee is being put in great opulence, or whether Krishna puts them in absolutely no opulence, like they are living in poverty. In any of those situations, the devotee is always surrendered to the Lord. They're never complaining, they're never thinking that, oh, why is everything taken away from me? Or why is it that I have to live a life like this? They are never, their only absorption is that I'm the servant of the Lord, and then I'm going to serve the Lord no matter what the external circumstances may be. Because it is very natural in Kali Yuga that the circumstances are never right. The circumstances are always challenging, and the circumstances are always such that they're going to test our devotion. So it is for us to become strong and then pray to the Lord to seek his help, that somehow or other, please keep me in your service. Please give me that devotion so that I can, in no matter whatever the external circumstance may be always internally situated at your lotus feet. So that is the meditation of a devotee. I was actually thinking about Prabhupada, because even for Prabhupada, because he's actually this exemplary devotee that we always look up to. And even in Prabhupada's situation, when we see that in his very early days, he had absolutely no money. He was actually walking and then just trying to save every penny to distribute, to publish his books, to print his books. And then eventually when he came to the West, he saw so much money coming in. He saw so many followers coming in. He saw so much of opulence, so many temples being opened. But in all of that, actually, we have seen pictures where Prabhupada is actually sitting with garlands, and then there are devotees surrounding him. One devotee is fanning him, the other devotee is washing his feet and then serving. But not once did Prabhupada actually ever think that, okay, now I am the master and all these people are my servants. His disposition was always that I'm the servant of the Lord. And then he was always so grateful for all his followers, all his disciples, to be helping him to spread this word of God. So that gratitude of people who are actually assisting in us in our service is very important, because that is very pleasing to Krishna. And when we start to complain, and then when we start to actually look into the faults of others, even Krishna doesn't like it. And what happens is that we fall down from our position of bhakti. So that is what it is being talked about here, that the only way that we can actually give up our attachments, whatever that attachment might be, the attachment of whatever, I am, even like attachments like, oh, I'm a very good pujari, or I dress Radharani so nicely, or whatever, or I'm a great cook, or because these are as devotees, we don't have those bigger attachments that I need a house, or I need a really big house, or I need a really big car, I need really big of this or that, or all of those. But we have different other kinds of attachments. And even for to let go of those designations, the only way is that when we actually see ourselves as the servant of Krishna, and whatever circumstance Krishna puts us in, we happily take that service, and then we continuously render that service, thinking how kind Krishna is that he has actually given us some service to render, although we are not qualified to actually perform any kind of service, but he's actually giving us something to do. And that gratitude will actually bring us closer to Krishna. So I will actually stop here, because these were some small verses for the class today. And then I will see what other devotees want to share from their realizations, or whatever they would like to share, some stories, or correct me for what I have said. Please go ahead, unmute yourself and share. Thank you.
Thank you, Prema Rasa Mataji, for beautiful explanation. And can you hear me, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Please share from your realization also.
And like, which I read is like, it says it's all about the opulences, about, how the house decorated, right? And the like clothing, all the ornaments. And I would like to share, maybe probably you all heard about Prabhupada speaking about this. And Prabhupada, I heard in one lecture of his, like he was saying, when he came to America, so America is like, everybody like, oh, this is so, advanced, materially so advanced, everybody wants to come to America. And when he got here, and I don't know, whoever served him in plastic plate, plastic spoon, and plastic like cup, and Prabhupada like, is this the, advancement over here in materially? Is everything in plastic instead of like, gold and silver? I don't know, maybe probably you also heard of it, you all heard about it. So yeah, that's all.
No, but thank you for bringing it up, Mataji. Actually, it is true. Even when I came to the US, I was surprised also, because in India we use steel, at least the metal. Here we use plastic. Then I used to think that why are we using plastic for everything? And then then I eventually got used to it, that probably that's how it is here. But yeah, even my grandfathers, we still have those plates made of silver that they used to eat from. And now I feel that whatever silver plate we have, let us use it for Krishna, because that's only one plate we have. But just think about them, like they were still like in a much better position than we are. Now we are like, what you said is like plastic, living in a plastic world. Yeah, so true. Yes, Mataji, thank you for bringing it. And
Thanks for the very nice class. I only heard it. I didn't hear the text, but I heard your explanation. That was really nice. Thanks.
welcome, Ruchi Mataji. Would you like to share anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking that many times we all are placed in positions where our faith is tested, but I think only God can also give us the courage and the determination to stand that test of faith. Or do you think it is our own doing, or is it like God given? Can you like quote some scripture or tell what the scriptures say about whether it is given by God or it is our own product
the determination to remain in faith and not give way to doubts.
Yeah. Mataji, we have to be very prayerful actually to seek that strength from the Lord, because we cannot do on our own strength, because Maya is very powerful. So we are in living in a world where it is the energy is um, like Maya's energy. So for us to be able to stay unwavered in this energy can only happen through the strength of Krishna. Because without his strength, we are very weak. But with his strength, we are very strong. So all we can do is just pray to Krishna and beg for his mercy. And as his mercy comes, then we feel stronger and then we feel more protected. So is that
Yes,
help,
I
Mataji?
think that is very important, because like in my personal example, I've seen that whatever strength in times of trouble I had was given by God, because many times when I tried to do it on my own, like gather that strength, uh, then at that point, uh, I don't have that strength. But at many times I wonder, at certain circumstances, how come I had that strength? Maybe because
Mm.
I was more spiritual, or God was giving me that strength at that point. Yes, that is very
Yeah.
true.
Yes. Yes. Yes, Mataji. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that experience. It is true, actually. We all go through that. Like when we look back, then we see certain circumstances and feel like, how did we even do such a thing? And it wouldn't have been possible if, like, Krishna's sanction and Krishna's strength wasn't with us. So, yeah. Thank you, Mataji.
But if we have the time, and you can tell me if I am interrupting anybody. But I had read in a lecture. I had heard a lecture in which there was a person who there is some noise in the background. So he was a very honest person, and he used to always. There is some noise in the background.
Yeah, Mataji, I think somebody's phone is not muted. Yeah. But I can hear you,
So
Mataji. You can go ahead.
So one person, he was very honest, and like how Maya tests us, and so like how like every day he used to go and have a drink of lassi, like sweet curd at a certain place every day, and so he was very honest. So one day somebody. At a certain time, he used to go every day, and so one day somebody left bag full of money. He didn't know it was a bag full of money, but he ran away and gave to that person, look, you left your bag behind. And he said, oh, thanks, because I was going to deposit this 1 lakh or whatever amount of money in the bank, and I was in such a hurry that I paid, and I forgot that bag of money. And so he's like, okay, and he didn't think much of it. And then he was wondering that, wow, I gave that bag full of money, but he said I would have done it anyways. But then a few days later, he's just thinking that, like, wow, I gave that bag full of money, and he was like, wow, I am sure an honest person. And then that day, the person, the shopkeeper gave, didn't realize that he had given him 100 rupees. So he gave him the lassi was 50 rupees. So he had given him actually 50 rupees. But the shopkeeper thought he has given me 100 rupees. So he returned him 50 rupees back. And he thought of something that looked, and he kept the 50 rupees and came back. So then he later thought of it, that am I the same person who gave the bag full of 1 lakh rupees to that person back, but 50 rupees when the shopkeeper by mistake gave to me back, I took it and kept it in my pocket and quietly came back. Am I the same person? So it's like many times we can do, like, because the theft is also not so easy with Maya or Prakriti, because she's saying, okay, this person, immediately, like, we tend to think it is our own doing, and not like mercy of God that we have that particular quality. Then immediately you see, he was wondering, am I the same person who just one day before gave that bag full of 1 lakh rupees, and for 50 rupees I kept it back? And I noticed that happens with me also sometimes. Like big things, I'm like, okay, I did this. And then small things, I am like, wow, in such a small thing, I didn't think if it was morally correct. So that's just like how intricate it is. Many times we do such big things, but slip in even the smallest things when when we lose our pride, or when we have pride. I mean, so yeah.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you for sharing. Okay, anyone else would like to share anything?
Thank you, Premarasa, for a very beautiful class. I appreciate it. That you shared the example of Srila Prabhupada, because it's nice to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, but I think everything comes alive when we hear about the life of Prabhupada and how he showed us the example, what scripture is saying. So it makes a huge difference. And as Ruchi Mataji was also saying, I appreciated her point that, you know, the greatest gift that the Lord gives is protection of our consciousness. And as you mentioned also, that when we do not criticize the devotees, when we do not complain, that is also protection that is coming from the Lord. And as Ruchi Mataji was saying, that the moment we disconnect from the Lord and we think that, we have done something great, the same quality may disappear, although it existed the previous time we did it. So we always need the protection of the Lord. And I very much appreciated the point that, criticizing devotees is not good for our consciousness. I can think of, like, it's easy to see when somebody is doing something. It's very difficult to see the same thing when we are doing it. It's very difficult to catch ourselves doing the same thing. So actually, I have seen very recently, I saw like 3 devotees, and all 3 devotees actually they made a mistake in their life. And actually, the easiest thing would have been if they took a humble position by saying, okay, I made a mistake, so please forgive me. Now I'm ready to rectify and move on in Krishna consciousness. What happened was that due to circumstances or whatever it is, those devotees did not admit that they make a mistake. So either they did not see it, that they made a mistake, or they saw it, but they felt it was better not to be honest about it. So
Mm.
both ways it could happen. We can only speculate from a distance. And instead of taking the humble position, they started criticizing the devotees who pointed out the fault in them.
Mm.
So, because of that, what I saw in all three cases of those devotees is that, first of all, the devotees did not accept them because they were not honest. If they were honest, the devotees will be kind enough. Many times, the devotees will be kind enough to accept a humble position of another person. So, first of all, they moved away from the devotees. Then, second thing is,
Mm.
they moved away from the Lord and their service because of not accepting their mistake.
Mm.
And then, actually, once we move away from the association of devotees and move away from the Lord, then Maya becomes very strong. So
Mm.
they went down the path of criticizing the devotees further and further and further, and they just totally moved away from like being like the nice services that they used to do. They moved away from the whole thing altogether. So this
Mm.
can happen to any one of us. So we should always be careful. We may not think that someone is watching us, but Krishna is always watching us, and we cannot
Mm.
um, like trick Krishna into something that we are not. So the best thing is always
But
to take a humble position.
as a I just wanted to say, but as devotees, we are all on a spiritual path. So isn't it our duty to point out if somebody is doing something wrong? Because both for the benefit of the devotee and for the benefit of other people who might be affected by it, it is our duty also to, if you observe somebody is doing something wrong, not in the spirit of being like trying to be the boss, but trying to be like in a helping attitude. If we are trying to humbly point out how the devotee can be a better devotee if that person doesn't make that mistake, do you think we should point it out or just leave it? Or
It is not a easy thing, Mataji. Out of all my experience at the temple, I can say it's never easy to point out a mistake in another devotee, because most of the times it is not taken in a nice way. In fact, it backfires many, many, many times. Like, this person thinks that, they are so great that they are pointing out mistakes, and so it backfire.
phone answering him with ya.
So if we want to
You
do
don't answer
something,
the
like,
phone. I
we
don't.
have to
While
take
I'm
Lord
driving, I don't get the
to the
phone
Lord
call, Cody. Bro, you need to turn that off.
before doing
I called you
something.
like.
And I think we also need to have some kind of a good relationship with the person that we are speaking with. So a lot depends on our own attitude, how we approach the devotee, how we share with the devotee, how nicely we are able to share with the devotee. Because if it is said in an improper way, then the other person cannot accept it, and in fact the other person also starts criticizing us um, for pointing out that mistake. So it goes into another whole big circle, which is very entangling in itself. So it's a very tricky to point out someone else's mistake, although in principle it is true that we can do something like that for the benefit of others, but in practice, I like it it hardly works.
because like we should always think how Krishna would appreciate us, right? That is the whole point of being in Krishna consciousness, how Krishna would want us to act. So by Krishna's example, he always stood up against anything that was wrong. Even single-handedly, he used to always oppose anything which was being done. Like from childhood, if he thought that Govardhan Hill should be worshipped instead of Indra. He was only very small, but he opposed it. He didn't. He didn't like. He didn't care. I mean, of course, that requires a lot of guts, because I know myself from practical experience that especially me, I am in a very vulnerable circumstance where I have nobody to defend me, and if I make enemies with people like surrounding me, then I have nowhere to go, nobody to support me. But then many times I think if Krishna would not appreciate it, because if he would have been there, he would have wanted me to fight against what's wrong, because that's what he always did. He always fought against what we thought was wrong. So, each and every example, single-handedly, he said that I am not approving of it. But of course, he was the supreme. He is God, so we cannot compare ourselves to him. But like thinking how we should act, then he would want us to oppose everything that we see happening around us wrong, to act again, to fight against what's wrong. That is in principle what Krishna consciousness is. So people at least who are more capable, who have people to defend themselves, or who have some support, or who are in a position of authority, he says that in Bhagavad Gita that your right is to action only, not to the fruits of the results. It's very, very difficult to follow, because I also think what's going to happen. Okay, if I fight with this somebody, or check this person, or say this person is wrong, I'll be standing out in the cold with nowhere to go, and there will be nobody to help me. And on top of that, if I have a migraine, that's what I think of first of all, who's going to help me out. But I think that's not what Krishna wants. He says that you have a right to action only, not to the result of your actions. But you should not do that. You should not try to be inactive, thinking what will be the result of that action. But that is exactly what happens to me, at least. So I just wanted to ask about that, because many times I always think, okay, if I am just going to go and say this or fight against it, this is going to happen, and I won't be able to handle it. Like many times I get scared, and I am not able to stand up against what I think is wrong, because that is one of the main verse that at least my father used to say is the essence of Bhagavad Gita, that you have a right to action alone and not to the result thereof. And one should not be inactive thinking about the result of the action, correct?
I will agree with you, Ruchi Mataji. It is true. A devotee must be able to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. That is part of the intelligence that he receives from Krishna. But at the same time, I think we also have to take into consideration when we point out something that is wrong, it has to be done with great care. That is my experience. Because if it is not done in a proper mood from our side, if it is done in I don't know, like what I feel is that if there are 100 things that are improper, hardly one devotee will be willing to hear what he's doing incorrectly.
Yes,
Mataji,
And
that's the
when
thing.
on this,
uh, go ahead, Antaranga Seva Mataji.
yeah, what Ruchi Mataji is saying about correcting devotees. So, few years back, I had heard in a Radha Gopinath lecture that it's okay that we have to correct devotees and we have to not criticize devotees. Everything is okay. But even when we go to correct someone, we have to think about some points. What is my relationship with this devotee? Is he my senior? Like if I go and correct my in-laws, they are not going to take it. So if someone is your senior, what is my relation, the jurisdiction of that relation? I can correct my son, but I cannot go and correct any child of his age. any boy of his age. Who is going to take it? I cannot go and correct my neighbor. He's not going to hear it. So of course devotees is different, but still we have to think about this, that what is my position? Where do I stand? Do I stand in a position where I can even correct someone? And if I don't, then I have to just tell this to some senior devotee that, see, I think this something is wrong, and then they can take care of it. But if I'm not a senior and I go and correct a senior, obviously he is not going to listen. So not
But
obviously, some are very humble and they might, but like Leela Manjari Mataji is saying, it backfires. So even in
okay, then
relationships, if I can correct my son, that is my jurisdiction. But to correct my husband, I have to think thrice. What will he say? Or he might just
but
speak.
but then in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna should have said, okay, think about the consequences of the action and then do the action. But he clearly says, do not worry about the result. You do your action which you think is right, and let not he has specifically and categorically said, let not the fruit of the action make you become inactive, but definitely not the fruit of the action. What is going to be the result determine may be an impediment to you being inactive. You have to do your action. That is the thing he says. He does not say think carefully and think about what will be the consequence and then you do your action, right? So then why does he say this particular thing? He says, so in every instance of his life, his personal life, or even in Bhagavad Gita, everything he thought from childhood which is wrong, he always opposed it. Like from the puja of Indra, everybody was doing it, and all the people were not his friends. Of course, he was the supreme God and he had the capacity, but we don't have that capacity. But then why would he have given that instruction also to others? Because he believed in it. That
because it is 4 after 6. Can I briefly share my
yes,
understanding?
yes, sure.
See, when Krishna says don't think about the result, it doesn't mean that we don't think at all when we perform some action. We have to use our intelligence. Supposing we are preparing for an examination, then it doesn't mean that, okay, I'm not going to think about the result of the examination and I'm just going to study something. No, we have to think, okay, what is the examination? What am I going to study? How am I going to prepare? How much time do I have? And how do I prepare for the examination? So it's not like a mindless thing. Even when speaking to the devotees, it has to be very carefully, many times I go and pray to the Lord, because I know, without the help of the Lord, this interaction may not even go nicely. So we have to pray to the Lord, that they are your part and parcel. They are your children. How am I going to speak to them in such a way that it helps them in their Krishna consciousness instead of backfiring? They should not go away from you because of what I have spoken. So we have to carefully think before we speak or say something. Is it helpful?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I understand your point of view, but I just want to say one last thing. We have very limited thinking abilities. Like, no matter how much we think, at least that's what I have seen. No matter how much I think, like for that same point, I can mull over for like 5 days over the permutation and combinations of what might happen. And there will be 2,500 action permutations, combinations of what the result of the action might be. Okay, what if I say to this person this thing and then there is a lightning on the, I'm just giving an example of what I think, lightning from the cloud, and he falls sick and he blames me for that. And there are like 5,000 permutation combinations that can result from my personal experience, what I'm saying. So what he is saying is actually more relevant if you do just your part that God, I did it with the right intention. Now you handle, because he's saying, I am going to give the result of that action. You just do that action. So it's very difficult to have that courage. I myself am saying it 90% of the times I get scared because I'm in a very vulnerable position. But that is not, I think, what God wants, because our thinking capacities are so limited. Like, at least that's what I realized. Like, for a single action, there can be 10,000 results. So the best thing is to follow what, in many times, what he's saying in essence is just do your part with the best intention that you are doing it for me and for the right action that you thought was right. And after that, leave the result to me. That is what he has said. Do your part and leave the result to me. But fight against what's wrong is his ideology, which he stands for. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's
all.
very true, Ruchi Mataji. I agree with you.
Thanks. No, I just struggle with it, that what Krishna would have actually wanted, and I'm mostly not able to do it because it requires a lot of courage. I agree. In present circumstances, it's not so easy, but that's what it is.
Hmm.
But thank you for tolerating my incessant questions and bearing with me and bearing with my uh,
No, I
sometimes
really
over
appreciate your honesty.
enthusiastic spirit.
No, I appreciate
Uh,
your honesty very much, Ruchi Mataji, because I think we have to speak, what is on our mind, what is on our heart, and and that's how, we get like a good discussion. Because if everything is hidden and everything is like, oh, I'm perfect, like everything is going well, like if nothing that is bothering us is spoken about, then we cannot progress properly on the path. So I appreciate always your questions and conversation.
Thank you. Thank
And
you for
what
your
and what
input.
you said is also true. Krishna is saying that, don't stand with the untruth, but there is a way to do it. That's what I'm saying. The way is not like go around and offend all the devotees who are on the path, on your path. It should not be like that. It has to be done in a very appropriate way. And there is different ways to stand by the truth.
Yes, I agree with you. So
I just wanted to say one point. I think that I agree with Leela Mandri that there's a way to do it. I think that, to go around and just make corrections of everybody, what kind of good are you going to, what kind of good result will come from that? I think that if you're going to make the endeavor of trying to correct someone, you need to reflect within or come from the position of love. I think that because it's really like Gurudev has commented on this, and he said it's not anybody's position to just go around and correcting people. He goes, first of all, he said, like, if we're talking about the temple, is this something that you should go to the temple president? That was a point that he made. And then he said, otherwise, like if you're coming from the position of love, that will help you determine, like, if you should make that correction and how you should be making it. Because just correcting people, it will create more damage than good. And why else would you be doing it unless you were trying to improve? Krishna does not look down upon us and go, oh, that person knows right and wrong, and he has made sure that everybody knows what's right and wrong. No, that's not what he wants. He wants you to be an instrument of him, and where is he coming from? He's coming from the position of love. So that's what I have to say about this. And Hare Krishna for listening.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that is very important. I agree. I agree. But I was just not saying about temple and devotees. I was just saying it in terms of like everyday encounters we have with other people, outsiders, or we encounter something wrong and we never take an active part on it, thinking that it does not concern us, or even if somebody is doing wrong, we don't we like, at least for me, I tend to like, okay, how much can I do? What difference will it make? That is something which I think Krishna wouldn't like, because he clearly always says that you should always take action against wrong. To action alone you have a right, and not to the results thereof. So like all we can do is do our best in all circumstances, but sometimes it gets difficult to fight against something that we don't agree is right, because everything is relative. It might be right from the other person's perspective 90% of the time, and we are seeing it from our perspective. But Krishna would not agree with that. He would be like, if you think something is wrong, then you have to stand up against it. That was his whole ideology, as far as I see in the Bhagavad Gita and his personal life. Even small things, he always stood up single-handedly from childhood to adulthood against what he thought was right, might not be right from other people's consideration. Like when he was fighting, and many times he took the wrong means even to defeat Guru Dron or Bhishma Pitama or other people, because he thought that they were like he knows everything, of course. So according to him, it was wrong what they did, that they were on the wrong side, and so he even adopted the wrong means, and like not the wrong means, but even if he says, even if you gotta tell a lie or whatever, but he says then. So he believed in like fighting against what one believes is right. I think that was his ideology in his life, in his teachings. So that's what he stands for. So it's very difficult to actually put it in practical use. That's what I'm thinking in my practical life. I think sometimes how much can I put that ideology to use in practical life? I mostly chicken out. That's what I'm just thinking for my
No,
own self.
Mataji, don't think like that. Like Krishna will always help you if you keep meditating on his instructions.
No, but maybe I am wrong at that point. That's why, because it requires a lot of tapasya or truth to be able to stand against something alone. He was always alone, and he always stood up against what's wrong.
Mm.
So that's what.
Yes,
What
Ruchi
it
Mataji,
is.
we will, but we must end here. It's like almost 15 after 6. So we must end here for today. And we will continue again tomorrow.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.